Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Revenge. The next person to cut me off in traffic is going to get a hot slice of foot-in-the-ass pizza. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by The Wobbly Elm, the bar for whether you're on the rebound or looking for a night to forget. The Wobbly Elm has a drink for you. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I'm Todd.
And we are filmmakers, as it were, who like to analyze and break apart films, like the little, what's those little eggs, like a Kinder egg. We just kind of crack them open and, yay, what's inside of this one? You never know. Little surprises. And so
full of it.
We like them. Yeah, grind them up. Man, I will say, like, being creative, or I guess anything in life, but this is such a hard field. We have films right now. I have a film right now that I made last year that we were submitting to festivals, and this past week my producer updated me on our two big ones that we were really hoping for, which was Tribeca and South by Southwest, and we got just big fat red rejection stamps in the face. He was much gentler in his wording, but the form replies are all the same. Like, hey, it was really hard this year. We had a record number of entries, and y'all suck. I mean, that's they
it's pretty much paraphrased, but
lightly paraphrased. But it's hard, man. That takes the wind out of you. I've had so many more rejections than like, congratulations, welcome to our festival that no one's ever heard of, and it gets exhausting. So I'm just curious. And I know we've talked about like the Stephen King bit before, which is always encouraging. Like, he stacked up so many rejection letters back in the day when he actually got letters. Like, he tells a story in his book on writing where he would submit to magazines and just get these rejections. And there was a nail that hung above his doorway. And so he would slap every rejection letter on the nail, and he soon stacked up so many that the nail was coming out of the wall and it was falling out. And so he started like a new stack. But I'm just curious, and which is great because eventually, he wrote Carrie, which his wife picked out of the trash and said, hey, finish this. and then you had Stephen King, who's now made like a novel a day for the last 150 years. And so I'm curious, like, what do you have a process? I don't know. Maybe you've never dealt with rejection. Maybe you've always come up Todd, but what's your method? How do you deal?
I don't know what that means. Absolutely. I mean, my whole life has been rejection, I would say. Yeah, I think anybody who's in create like some kind of creative field, or heck, even not, goes through that, right? So you're bad until you're not, and even when you're not everybody knows that you're not, and including you. So I think that it's just part of it, because nobody's on your journey. You're the only one, and so you kind of this is an interesting conversation because it's kind of like you should learn to love it, learn to love the rejection, because that just means, because one, you'll have a lot to love, but two, you won't expect to not be rejected, right? So, and I think it's important to expect to get rejected because it just makes you work that much harder. I think, when I in my band, we would, submit to labels and management companies and, producers to work with and all that stuff. And 98% of the time got rejected. But that didn't mean that what we were doing, that we didn't love what we were doing. Right. And so, and it's the Stephen King story is like perfect because, it wasn't just him that was rejected. It was his stories. And some of those stories are like iconic stories now. I think It was one of them even. Like it was like so I think the point is that just because somebody else doesn't see your vision doesn't mean that it's not the right one if you love it. So that's what I meant earlier by nobody's on your journey but you. It's like nobody cares. Nobody cares about your journey. Only you care about it. And so how much do you care about it? Do you care about it enough to not care that other people don't care? That's important. Because if you do, then you're doing it for the right reasons. And then somebody rejecting you doesn't mean shit. It just means they don't get it. Okay, fine. It doesn't even necessarily mean that you're not good at what you're doing or not good enough at what you're doing. It just means they don't see it. You know, there are plenty of musicians who I think that 90% of people on planet Earth would think that's terrible, but I love it, right? And what does that say? That doesn't say that that musician or that band is bad, because I love it. It says that those people just don't get it, and that's fine. So that means maybe you're reaching out to the wrong people. You know, maybe it's a different person or a different type of studio or festival or whatever. Or it means that, yeah, you can do better. Either way, it should be a welcomed thing. And it's hard to look at something like that because you're creative and you make something that you feel is like from the heart and important and, you know, all the things of why you make it, you've felt, right? Oh, I feel this when I make this and everything. But then that's great. Then that's a win. You know, push that as hard as you can, do what you can with that and move on to the next thing. There's always a next thing. If you're really a creative, if you're really like loving what you're doing, there's always something else. And it's okay to push something really hard because you believe in it, and then to do something else too, to like create something else as well. You know, I used to be really bad at that. I used to be, I would write a song and I couldn't do anything else but that song. Like that song was like very important to me. It was vital that was done well. It was recorded perfectly. It was mixed perfectly, mastered and like promoted, like all that stuff. And I think all of that is very important. And I think none of it is at the same time, because in the end, nobody gives a shit if the snare is 2 dB louder, you know, or like nobody knows that but me, right? And so harping on that just doesn't matter. Move on to the next thing. Just keep creating, because that's what it's about. And I think that a real true creatives, like, and you're a very good example of this, just keep going, you know, using the rejection, using the pass, I'll call it, not so much a rejection, because honestly, I don't give two shits about South by Southwest. Sorry, South by. Don't care. I don't care about ACL. Don't care about any of it. Because in the end, that festival will pass and then it's in the past. Right? So, and it doesn't matter. So what I care about is what am I doing now and what am I doing tomorrow? Right? And so if that comes in and I feel the need to make something, I'm going to make it. And if I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to push it hard and I'm going to do what I can. But if it comes back from the people I'm sending it to as that's not good enough, or what rejection, which 90% of the time it is, okay, well, I've got 10 others, you know, now I'm going to push this one now. Oh, I'm going to push that one now. And you're just relentless about it. Relentless until, like the Stephen King way, until they can't ignore you anymore. Right? You're like, fuck, this Stephen King guy, this is the 10th thing I've gotten from him this week. Like, oh my God. Like, I can't get him off my back. Fine. Let's have a call. You know? Whatever. I guess that's, you know, my little spiel there is that I've been rejected a lot. I mean, at everything that I've ever done. And it sucks and it stings and everything, but it's important to recognize it and just and live in it and then let it go, because as a creative, that will destroy you. It will destroy your creativity. It will destroy your passion. It will destroy your soul, and your reason, your why you even do it. Like, I stopped playing music for years because the rejections were destroying my why. It was like, what, I'm no longer doing this because I like making music and it's important to me. I'm doing it because I want other people to like it. And now I don't give two shits if anybody ever hears anything or likes anything that I do. And I really mean that. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you like it. I don't care if my wife or kids like it. Don't care. And what's funny is that it turns out that the stuff that I have been writing lately, my wife and kids absolutely adore. They adore it. And which is hilarious because they never said anything about my old stuff. So that leads me to think that maybe I'm onto something. And whether that turns into anything, I, again, don't care. But I'm just doing it because I like it. So yeah, rejections suck. And you have to learn how to use them rather than let them abuse you, right?
Yeah, and I got really used to rejection as an actor because 95% of what you do is rejection. Like, you go in, you pour your heart out in the audition room, and then no one ever even says no. You just get ghosted 1,000 times before.
But even when you book it and you're taping, you're getting it all wrong all the time until you get it right once. Right? So it's just like constant rejection. Good point.
Even when you book it, you're still fighting through rejection. And no, totally. And so I think you're right. You do got to learn to love it, or at least anticipate it, and to not let it define you and say, hey, you know what? That's part of the game, it's part of the process. And you can't align all the tastes of everybody in the world. Everything you put in front of someone isn't going to be received well. And to a large degree, the people that we, consider to be tastemakers may not really have that great of taste, by our own standards anyway. So like, a lot of the films we cover may not be necessarily loved by, most of America, right? Someone goes back in 2021 and rewatches that original Rocky, they're going to be like, oh, this sucks. And meanwhile, I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it goes. Yeah. So I think, there's a lot of beautiful wisdom that you just, shared, especially the idea, and it's so good. No one else is on your journey except you. Like, you're by yourself. And that's true of everyone to a large degree. And we're all overlapping. We're all cheering each other on. But to a large degree, everyone around us is a side character in our own plot. And we're just, moving forward.
Yeah. As much as I root for you, and as much as you root for me, in the end, like, we have our own things that we're doing, that we're working on, and I can only root for you and help you as much as I can. But, the rejection isn't going to affect me how it's going to affect you. And my rejections aren't going to affect you like me. It is, it's my journey is my own, and I can't hand that off to anybody else. Not that I would necessarily want to, but, I can't do that. And I think the moment that you accept that as a fact and something that's beautiful, it's beautiful. It's your journey. It's your thing, right? Nobody else told you, Wes, watch movies and love movies, because movies are very important. You discovered that. Like, that was something that just, like, it hit you, right? Like, you knew about it. It was a big part of your life, and it became bigger and bigger. It was like a snowball, and now it's what you do. It's what you've done for 15, how many years now? How many? Oh,
full time, 9, acting, 15, editing, another 15,
Yeah, geez. So
writing 20.
Right. So that is your journey, and no one, and also the other thing is, like, because it's your journey and you're sending it out to the world, right? Think of all the factors that come into play between you having an idea, you putting the time and effort into writing it, the time and effort and money into creating it, and then editing it and all that stuff, and then sending it out to the world, and then it meets somebody. Not only does all that stuff have to be perfect, but also the person that it meets has to be the right person at the right time in their life. It's not just about you. It's them. If I'm in a bad mood and I'm someone who's reviewing films for a festival and I get a rom-com, I'm probably not going to want to say, yeah, let's accept the rom-com. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, but if I get some dramatic relationship, brutal film that relates to me at that time, then you know what I'm saying? So there are an infinite amount of different things that can change the outcome. And that has nothing to do with how good your film is. It's just, and that's just one scenario, right? There's a million of them. So it's hard to not take it personal, but
I'm sure I'm going to find the other, million over the next couple months. So that's encouraging.
And, I bet that's important though too. I bet like as ridiculous as it might seem that like, oh, this film got in and your film didn't, and it's pretty obvious your film is better. The point isn't that. The point is like, okay, well, let's try to think, why wouldn't that get in?
Yeah.
Maybe because of this and this and this. Okay. These are little things I'm going to change next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I've learned from it. Cool. Next. I think that's important for sure. You never want to make the same mistake, especially a big one, twice. Right. So, I'm sorry to hear that, man. That sucks.
No, it's part of the game.
It really does. But
like I said, we got another, I think 10 that we're submitting or so. And so I'm excited to, see those not accepted replies too.
Yeah. My wife has been, writing and submitting to, and she's also been like, trying to apply for jobs and stuff. And dude, constant rejection, like all the time, to the point where she's like excited. I got 3 rejections today. I mean, she's never really excited about that. Let's be honest, but she has to act it, like, okay, all right. Adjust my CV. Next.
Here we go. Nice.
So easy to say. But.
Nice. Well, I mean, it's what you're the ideas that you're talking about. I mean, they make for a really good creed, if you will.
Oh, there we go. He did it. Spoiler alert. So, following up on that, beautiful segue. Today we are covering Creed. If you haven't watched this film, please pause this episode and go watch it. We're going to be giving away a lot of spoilers.
Tons of things. We'll talk about a few things. Some of the cinematography, using boxing as a camera language. We'll touch on some of the writing and story, scene pacing, some of the reaction shots, and Donnie's motivation as the ultimate plot device. And I might be playing that up a little strong in this presentation. But we'll talk about all that and other such stuff and things and stuff.
So a quick synopsis of the film. The former world heavyweight champion Rocky Balboa serves as a trainer and mentor to Adonis Johnson, the son of his late friend and former rival Apollo Creed. Directed by Ryan Coogler. Screenplay by Ryan Coogler and Aaron Covington. Cinematography by Maryse Alberti. Starring Michael B. Jordan as Adonis Creed, Sylvester Stallone as Rocky, Tessa Thompson as Bianca, Phylicia Rashad as Marianne Creed, and Tony Bellew as Pretty Ricky Conlan.
Is he okay?
Say that, Bianca. It's okay.
I'm cool, man. I'm cool.
I'm good. You're good? I'm good, all right. You sure about that? I am.
He's taken a lot of punishment to both the body and the head. Left eye completely closed.
Let's stop this thing.
No, let me see the eye. Time! Doc, give him a look.
Show me your eye. Show me your eye, Donuts. How many fingers? How many fingers? How many, Adonis?
4.
And again.
2.
Time in!
All right, breathe through your mouth. Deep breaths, kid. Deep.
You are up on the cards. You're winning this. You are gonna win this. But just keep smart and keep away from him. He's going to sleep this time. He's going out this round.
I should have stopped this one with your father. I'm stopping this one now.
Don't, okay? Let me finish. I gotta prove it.
Prove what?
I'm not a mistake.
Look at me. I never got a chance to thank Apollo for helping me out after Mickey died. but it's nothing compared to what you've done. You taught me how to fight again, and I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna fight this thing. But if I fight, I want you to fight too. I want you to go across this ring and knock that son of a bitch down. Can you do it? Say it.
I'm gonna knock that son of a bitch down.
I know you are. You know why? Because you're a Creed, and I love you, kid. Son. Go get him, Donnie.
Round 12 begins.
Ooh.
Oh my God.
What'd you think, man?
Goosebumps. Oh my gosh. It's so good. So good. This is the not the first time I've seen the film. I remember the first time I saw it. I thought it was pretty good, but it was a long time ago, and you know, I don't know what changed, but for some reason watching it again this time was completely just, I think maybe following Rocky, you know, completely just demolished. It was so good in every way. The writing was fantastic. The storyline was, I mean, like it's so good. There's little pieces that emerge throughout the film, that being the main crux one that they never even hint at, right? Like obviously he's a kid who's searching, right? You know that from the beginning because he's fighting as a kid and he's in juvie and all that stuff, and you know he has this good job, he's getting promotions, but it's not enough, and he's trying to make a name. So you can tell that he's searching, but you don't know why, right? And there's no hint that he's still lacking something even until that line. And I love that the music dies out, the crowd dies out. It's just Rocky and Creed, and he says that. Oh, I got goosebumps just then. I can't even see it. You know, we're doing this via Skype, so I can't even see it, but I remember it. And then Rocky telling him that he loves him. I would just almost, you're a Creed and I love you. Like, man, just pulls on your heartstrings. Because especially if you've seen the others, like if you've seen, you know, the third Rocky or whatever, fourth Rocky, any of them really, you know how like bonded, you know, they get. So, fantastic in every way. There were a couple of moments that I thought were like vomitous, that I didn't like at all and thought were, you know, totally useless. But overall as a film, I mean, I love how they incorporated a lot of modern music, you know, modern hip hop in there, and different style of shooting, right? So there were a couple of moments where they would put in like actual footage and stuff from other fights, or like actual footage from Sports Center and things like that, to make you feel like you're doing research on this fight, right? Yeah. You're like you know, an outsider. And I loved that. None of the other Rockies really had that, you know. So it felt very modern, very now, right? And the other Rockies feel old, and Rocky is old. So it was a very good dichotomy there. Giving Rocky cancer, brilliant touch, having him want to quit. Because why would he want to fight anymore? He doesn't need to, you know. Adrian's not here anymore. He doesn't really have, you know, he doesn't see his son at all. We don't see him at all in the film. He doesn't really have anything to live for, right? So why would he fight? But having Adonis be the reason is fantastic. And I love that Adonis is never, he's in the past, in like either other Rockies or other fighting movies like this, you always have this kid who's really good, but he's cocky, right? And he's just like, he doesn't work enough. And you know, he just expects it because he's really good. This is the opposite of that. And I love it. Adonis is like, you tell me what to do. I don't give a shit. I'll do it right now. Let's do it. And there's a couple of times where it's hard and he just doesn't get it. And they show that because they need to show that he hits walls throughout his training. Obviously, he's not been a fighter for very long. So, especially at this level. So That's important too, but he pushes through it because of his determination. And there's never a moment where he's like, I want to quit.
Mhm.
And I just love that, because that's what you want to see. That's what you want to see, especially someone who's going after Rocky to be his trainer. Like, okay, work your ass off, dude. Because this, you got, the Italian stallion in your corner now. And this is the hardest worker in the room. So, and he does. And then the dichotomy of having a girlfriend who's a musician going deaf, right, is a totally different thing. Music is a very central theme of the film. It felt like modern music.
Mm.
And I loved her music. Her music was very like strange and off the wall, but beautiful. And she loved it. Didn't give a shit if anybody else liked it, but she just made it, right? And the whole conversation of that they have in the diner, I think on the first date, where he asks her about it, and she says that eventually she's going to go deaf, but she's just going to do it until why not? Why stop? Right? She's going to do it until she can't. And I think that speaks to Adonis so well, because he's very much that same kind of attitude, but it's a dichotomy of a totally different kind of world, right? The musical world. Anyway, I could talk forever about it, but yeah, it's beautiful.
That's such a good point though about Adonis and his work ethic, because he's so hungry and he's begging for like guidance. And you're right, like the cocky upstart is usually the one who doesn't think they need it, and he's on the opposite end of like, I'm begging for help and nobody will come teach me how to throw a punch.
But he doesn't want to use his dad's name, right? He wants to do it on his own. How often do you see that in a film? I think in real life, a lot of people, not everybody obviously, but a lot of people would want that, like
trade
I want
on
to
their
make it on my
parents'
own.
name.
And yeah, exactly. But in a film, like you don't usually see that. So
no, really smart dynamic. Yeah, same, man. I loved it. I didn't know really what to expect coming in the first time I watched it, but I was already a big fan of Ryan Coogler from Fruitvale Station, and Michael B. Jordan was certainly, on the upswing. And so I was excited to sit and see what he crafted. Cause conceptually, I really liked, what? I will say conceptually, I was on the fence. I was like, oh, now we have a new Rocky film about Apollo's son. Did Apollo have a son? Like, what's this thing? And so walking in, I think it did have to win me over, but it did it pretty quickly because of the setup. I think that opening sequence of watching him and Juvie like brawling, and then kind of getting pulled out, and they establish the setup right away so that it doesn't become this lingering question. Like they set up the scenario of, oh, this kid was had out of an affair, and yet he's being rescued by the other woman. Like that's an incredible dynamic to start with, and I was just like, okay, this is nothing like I expected, and just every step of the way it just kept getting better and better and more compelling. I was a big fan of this thing from the get-go. I think one of the things I really liked was Rocky's tricky. He's a tricky character to write. And I think I identify more with like Rocky from the first Rocky and the last one, 1 and 6, who's got this more aw shucks attitude and reserved. I think this felt like a Rocky that was more based on 2, 3, and 4, where he's a little bit more outgoing and a little bit more assertive. And it makes me want to go back and actually finally sit down and watch all those other Rockies just so that I can like hang out with him a little bit more. Cause he still has those beats, those moments of showing that other Rocky, that, that quiet and, like he has a few moments of like this little self-talk. I love Rocky talking to himself, which I usually hate out of a character, but with him, it just feels so natural and organic. And then he blows up at the kid and he's like, why'd you do that? You shouldn't have done that. It's perfect. It's so perfect. And it's so challenging to write an iconic character, that everyone knows, and maybe and I think Coogler grew up on Rocky films, right? Like most of, people our age, and he loved them. And so that's got to be really sickeningly challenging to sit down and say, I'm going to write my favorite character now. And it's not going to just be fanfic. It's going to be like canon now. This is canon. And I'm going to build on that. And that had to be so intimidating, but he did a great job because I think he still found some really smart, like organic things to do with Rocky as a character. That's breaking ground because like you said, like now we have Rocky wanting to give up because he had to write the perfect scenario for that. Otherwise we're just like, that's not Rocky. Rocky doesn't quit. Rocky isn't a quitter. But now Paulie's gone. Adrian's gone. His son is gone. And he's got cancer. The thing that killed his wife is about to take him. He's like, you know what? I've had a good run. I'm not going out like that. I'm just going to call it a day. And I'm okay with that. I've made my peace. And it felt right. And Adonis like had a great way to like bring him back. These dynamics are like, we're in a ring and everyone's fighting and it's just absolutely fantastic. Just brilliant writing. And it's one of those things where I walked out of the movie. I was like, why did I ever think that it was going to be anything less than just absolutely like pitch perfect? And two with Rocky, like as a boxer, he said, how does Rocky look at training someone else? Like that's a new wrinkle for Rocky because Rocky he was never a trainer really, right? He was always, the fighter. And now having to take a step back, we see that Rocky is a really smart trainer. He's like, there's things I can't do, right? And he brings in the gang to help him with the things that he's not good at. And even whenever it comes to getting his shot, like the kid starts getting approached by, these fights, Rocky doesn't tell him no. Like I think a normal way to go about that is you're not ready. And he wasn't by every technical reason. There's no reason Rocky should have said, oh yeah, you're ready. In fact, he told him, no, you're not, but I'm by your side and screw it. Let's go. Because Rocky as a boxer understood you can't stop someone from chasing what they want. And I'm here to train you, not to tell you what to do and not to do with your career and your life. And that's a boxer mentality that I think Coogler saw Rocky and said, hey, what does he do differently than other trainers do? And I think that's one of them. Just letting, Donnie pick his fights. Like that's your job. That's not mine.
Yeah. I loved that. That was definitely, this is a really good thing to do. Watch Rocky 1 and then watch Creed because Coogler was brilliant in his writing here. Like this is something, the scene with Mickey in the, from the first one with Mickey and Rock in his apartment. I won't talk about it. Go listen to that episode. That scene is directly related to the scene in the basement of his restaurant when they're talking about, should I take this fight? He's like, I'll go make the call because he's, it's directly correlated with the other scenes too, but I feel like right there, it's like, Mickey should have been with him from the beginning, seeing, how good he was and his potential and his love for it. And he wasn't. Rocky didn't want to make that mistake. He knows how important it is for someone like Adonis, someone who's trying to make a name for himself, who is driven, who will do anything, who will go live with him. He's like, all right, here's your shot. It's up to you. It's your journey. It's your life. I'm just, like you said, in your corner. And it was just so beautiful. And I think that watching Rocky 1 really puts a parallel on it. And I like the way that Coogler wrote him a little bit different because he is different. He's old and he's slow and we find out sick and whether he knew it or not. And, he's jaded in a way. And the only way that Rocky could be not angry jaded, just, that's life. Right. But that's, the things that happen to you can only be life for so long until it's like, shit, that's life, and a lot of life happens to Rocky. So I thought that the way that he wrote him was really good. Man, he's always his character has always reminded me of my dad so much, because he's just so loving and playful as a younger person, but then he gets older and he's less playful just because he can't be, but he's more playful with his words than he is with his body, right? So his words stay playful, but he'll snap at you. If you do something bad or wrong or against or whatever, he'll snap. And then he'll apologize. And it's just very much like my dad. So the whole time I'm like, oh my God, I just love this guy so much. I love Sylvester Stallone. So thank you for giving us Rocky. Right. But I thought Coogler did a good job of that writing too. So.
What did you think of the montages? There was like 2 or 3, depending on how you count it, like a lot of montages. And I'm just curious, like,
which ones remind me?
So the first one is when Rocky kind of takes him under his wing, and I think the first scene is, you want me to do what?
Oh.
And it's like, you're going to catch a chicken. And he does it. Like there's no hesitation. That's the great thing about Donnie as a character, is he does what's asked of him. Every time. And so, yeah, he's chasing chickens and then, running and kind of getting stronger for the Sparino fight. And then the second one is where he's training for, the big fight that, is coming with Ricky, Pretty Ricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember the okay, so are you talking about the montages when he's working out and all that stuff?
Yeah, exactly. The kind of classic, workout montage.
Yeah, sorry. For some reason I thought you said monologue. I was speaking of monologue. I don't remember a whole lot of them, but I did like, when Rocky first accepts the role of training him and pulls him aside in the gym and basically like just tells him, this is how it's going to be and you do it or not. And he's like, let's go right now. I liked that. But the montages, I'm not a fan of montages. I don't like them. I never really have. There are a couple throughout, that the history of montages that I have liked, but in this case, the chicken one was endearing because Rocky said at the end when he kissed the chicken, he's like, I guess these chickens are slowing down these days or something. The chickens are getting slower or something, which I thought was so hilarious because he spent so much time trying to catch a damn chicken earlier in his career. So that was very lovable, in my heart. The whole motorcycle thing, that was one of the things that completely destroyed the moment for me. When he was running, he was like calling them to him to run down the street, and then they were circling around him and he was yelling to Rock in the window. I mean, they hung there so long.
Yeah.
I'm like, my God, okay, do it. Yell to Rock. He comes out. Oh yeah, we're going to kick his ass. And then cut. Like, they held there for, it felt like a fucking minute. And I was just like, my God, man. Yeah, that was brutal and awkward. It was very awkward because he kept yelling the same thing over and over again. So I did not like that at all. But you got to see a montage at some point in something like this, because you got to span time and span the effort. So we have to see the effort over the given amount of time. In this case, I think it was like 6 weeks or something. And so montage is the easiest way to do it. And it lifts you up to show all the effort that's given and how he's hitting walls and breaking through them and trying new things and messing up and then getting, better at it and all that stuff. I thought that they interspersed them very well. I will say that. And they weren't super long. So, that was good. It was like, we would get in and do it. And right when I would feel like, okay, but let's get back to the movie, it would. So that felt good. But it wasn't anything that like really jumped out at me, except for that moment. That moment, I was like, my God, didn't like it.
I would say I mostly agree. Like, I generally loved all the montages. They're efficient, they're fun. You get to see, like you said, progression, passage of time, that all works. And I completely agree about that. Because up until that moment of that montage, that second montage, the Sparino, right, we're watching him do his thing. And I was even okay with, I actually really like the inclusion of like the motorcycles and the ATVs, just because I know that's a real East Coast thing. Baltimore is like really big on that too. But that it was just a cheesy, you know, run finish. And I felt like this is Coogler's throwback. I'm going to really throw it back to the hardcore Rocky fans. And we're just going to sit on this moment. And I would agree. Like, I think we just sat too long. Like, it just didn't feel, it was awkward. Like, we're shadow boxing while bikers are circling them. And it's just a little much. Whereas what's funny is in the trailer, I distinctly remember the trailer capturing it even better. Because in the trailer, you can tell, you know, this is all shot in like, I don't know, 60, 120 frames a second, something like that. They're shooting it in slow-mo, but in the film, they play it back at 24 frames. And so it's got this really actiony, choppy effect, which plays, you know, fine enough. But what they used in the trailer was a slow-mo shot. And so of him running up the street when he lets out that yell, that's done in slow-mo in the trailer. And it's beautiful. And it's like, it gives me chills, like, you know, even thinking about it, because it's this perfect punctuation mark on the montage. And instead of ending it like they did in the trailer, they play that back in real time and then let that moment play out with the circle, you know, bikers circling. And it just doesn't fit, and it does feel a little exasperated. And
I remember that moment in the trailer,
right,
that you're talking about. I remember it.
It hits, man.
It was slow-mo, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't notice that. Man. I
remember watching this in the theater and saying, "Oh, that's interesting. They're not going with the slow-mo of this shot. They're going, you know, full." And then the moment after, I was like, "Oh no.
Yeah.
what are we doing?"
And I get the whole, you know, because the priest used to bless Rocky before his fights. You know, he would go from the window. So I get that kind of hearkening thing back, because Rocky would go, he'd say, you know, Father, you bless me, you know, for my fight or whatever, and he'd bless him, and then he'd go off and he'd do his run or whatever, but he'd always do it from a window. So that was the whole, he was playing on that.
I didn't know that.
So I get that. Totally get it. Totally get it. Just don't do it so long. And the shot of him running and the bikes going past him, we're looking at his back, and he's running away from the camera, and the bikes and the four-wheelers are going past him. That's a beautiful shot. I love it. Yeah. And then they cut back to his face, right? And they're coming this way towards the camera. Beautiful again. Yep. Even him yelling to Rock. Yeah. And Rock's coming to the window. He's sick. He can't come down there. He can't train with him. You know, like, beautiful, beautiful moment. Just, man, get out of it.
Yeah, you got to get out of it.
Give it to us and get out of it.
I think if we were going to try to keep that scene intact, largely, I think you would have to kill that whole windows section and have Rocky come out and like bring the mitts out or something, have him finish that run with him actually interacting with Rock. But then you do kill that whole, you know, callback that you're talking about with the priest. I don't know. Yeah. I think the smarter way is...
I'm fine with it being in there.
Yeah.
I just thought it hung too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. And them circling him,
yeah.
That felt very staged.
Yeah. Yeah, it did.
But I mean, I think we're beating a horse here.
Totally. Because this is one moment out of like a 2-hour plus movie.
Right, exactly. And I completely forgive it.
Yeah, totally.
100%, you know. Yeah.
Even in the moment, I'm like, yeah, okay, guys, I'm ready for what comes next. And then I'm right back in it. It doesn't really cost me anything.
Right.
But speaking of like, you know, the circling and all that, cinematography, I thought was really, really smart and just beautiful. I thought coming in that Rachel Morrison shot this because she usually shoots Coogler's films. And I was surprised to find out that she did not. And probably, I'm assuming she was probably shooting Dope at the time. I want to say these came out relatively close to each other. And so maybe she was already committed to that. But this was still shot, you know, really wonderfully. To me, I'd always rather have Rachel Morrison. That's no slant against Maryse. Maryse, however you are. I apologize for, as we usually do, butchering your name.
Oh, yeah.
But the camera language is really great regardless. A lot of tracking shots behind Adonis that feel like we're walking into a ring, right? Like when he exits his apartment to beat on Bianca's door for the first time, we kind of exit with him, or there's all these circling shots like we're in the ring with him, like the locker room when he's warming up and before the big fight at the end, like we're just circling as he's working the mitts, and then as he's having this conversation with Rocky, and like it's just constant like drawing on the body language of being a boxer and being in the ring, and inserting that, you know, very literally into non-boxing moments that make you feel like, yeah, we're always in a fight. And there's this great I'm on the fence with it. The Sperino fight is this one big long take, right, where we start in the middle of the ring, right before the fighters enter to touch the gloves, and then the rest of that fight sequence is a oneer. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was a little disappointed. I was like, y'all did not like perfectly execute it. It just felt a little forced in points. And so coming in this time, I was expecting to just kind of groan through it, and I was like, was that the winner? Because that actually looked pretty good. And so I think it aged much better than it did in my memory. I think I was just a little too tuned in that first time watching it, and not expecting it. It just popped up, and I, you know, as we do, you're just zeroed in on every little detail your first watch. And so, yeah, I thought it was really good. I mean, it worked. It kept me glued in, and I thought, you know, all the fight sequences, you could tell, you know, they're definitely playing into it. But I think it worked. You know, they kept the depth of field really deep to make pulling focus a lot easier. I loved all the interactions, especially after he knocks him down. And Donnie starts yelling to Rock, "We got one, Rock." He's like, he's still counting over there, bro. And he's like, no, he's not getting
like,
up.
it's not over. Yeah.
It was so good. And then I love whenever the fight's over and they call it, Bianca's reaction when she gets into the ring and she like shoves him. She's so like whatever, wound up. And
it's so good.
She's beaming, right? This big smile. I didn't know you could throw like that. It's just, I think her performance is maybe the best thing in that whole sequence. Like her genuine excitement. And I don't know if there was something going on set that day that brought out a little extra like brightness out of her, or you know, she's just always amazing. But I just loved her performance. And then I love, what is it? I think it's Donnie. He starts yelling to Rocky. He's like, "Let's go paint the city." And
oh my God,
we cut to them crashed on the couch eating ice cream.
He's like, "All right, let's go." And nothing. Yeah.
Oh, it's
so perfect.
It's perfect. It's adorable. It's like, that's really what I want. I didn't want to see them party. I wanted to see them, you know, be old people. Because I'm sure after a fight, you're just done. And so that was, I thought that was beautiful. As far as story and writing, the pacing, I don't know what it is right now. I'm just really watching pacing and scenes, and Coogler does a great masterful job of pacing throughout the film. And even like the transitioning of moments, I love how he paces that. They're simple and subtle, in order to not rush a scene and give it breath. So all these things that are happening feel organic and naturalistic. And that's ultimately what you're aiming for. And I think a lot of the amateur productions, what they'll do is not realize it's okay to take your time. It's okay to have a beat to create this new moment. And if you don't understand your writing or the screenwriter and where those transitions are, you don't understand where you need to insert these moments and these beats and these pauses in order to let a moment have a breath, because you can't transition. Like he's waiting for his mom at the stairs, you know, towards the beginning as he's about to leave. And we wait several beats before she enters. We're just sitting there. Whereas you could have started that scene with her just entering. Like, we're there and she walks through the door. It starts to feel a little rushed, and it's like, okay, where are we at? And if you just give us a little bit of time to think through, what's he doing? Oh, he's intentionally here. He's waiting for her. Oh, he just heard her. He like looks up. He's like, okay, I can hear her footsteps. And now we're anticipating with him. Now we're with him instead of like being thrown into the scene. were prepared for it. And I think that also goes hand in hand with the boxing language. Like when things happen in boxing, they don't just come out of nowhere. Like a punch doesn't really ever come out of nowhere. It comes because of something else that's happening within the ring. These are all things that are tied together. And if you don't let these moments breathe, then we don't feel those connections quite as well. The world makes a little less sense. Like we would have understood that scene, but it would have felt a little less, it would have felt more chaotic and less sensical. Similarly, and maybe the first one that really drew my attention was in the conversation on their first not date at the Philly cheesesteak restaurant with Bianca. He asks her if he can ask about something sensitive. They're in this middle of this conversation. Now he could have just jumped from, yeah, what's a John? Yeah, what's going on with your ears? Like that could have played. I'm sure there's a world where that plays really well, but that also doesn't feel right for his character. And doesn't seem like that's the way you want to talk to someone you're trying to win over. And so I love, he asks, can I ask you something sensitive? And she's like, yeah. And then we just hang out for a second and he doesn't even talk. He just taps his ear. He's like, and that's just kind of a signal that, hey, this is what I'm asking about. You can either address it or not address it. That's up to you. But it's out there. And of course, like you noted earlier, she has no problem. Like she's going to talk about it and it's a part of her motivation. It's part of her drive. And similarly with her, I love the development of their first kiss right there on the floor, right? He looks over and he pecks her on the cheek and they just really sit on that and let her react to it. And it's so slow and she just kind of works through it and he doesn't rush it and he just waits until she finally like reciprocates. And it's just a beautiful, simple moment that just shows, yeah, we're going to let the relationship grow on its own. We're not going to rush through anything. And another little moment, and I was just kind of picking up on all these little beats before the scenes. Like we're going to enter a scene before the scene actually starts, which is atypical. Normally, you want to start a scene in as deep as you can. But here, they let us see the moments before the scene begins. But when the scene starts, it starts. Like they don't waste any time getting to the meat of the scene. And so it's a very smart, delicate writing job that he's doing. And so with Rocky, we're sitting right before he gets to the cancer news, we're sitting with him and he's just bouncing a ball. He's bouncing a ball. Then the doc enters, drops the bomb. Like it's very fast once we're in it. And with the fighter, the rapper, that scene after, the cancer news breaks and Donnie finds out and he goes to the concert to see Bianca. That whole sequence with the fighter is just a slow boil. And then once it hits, it's like the kettle just blew because he's got a button and that comes back and we'll try to include this in his ultimate motivation. But that's a part that as we begin to realize, like there is something going on between him and his dad. And this is one of those signals because this guy just compares him to his dad and puts his dad down effectively. And it's like, nope, this is all I can handle today. Like Rocky's got cancer. He's not going to fight. I'm going to fight you. And that's how this is going down. And then the slow-mo knockdown at the very end. God, what a great emotional sequence and excellent use of silence because they show us the big moments, right? These little flashbacks as he's asleep. He's out and we're witnessing him in slow-mo. We're watching Conlan and, regular action. He's celebrating his victory already. And they let us project the emotion. We never hear a word. God, beautiful. Like that's so much patience and understanding. And I love silence when used properly. I think the worst time to use silence is at the beginning of a film. That's dangerous. You have especially in a theater, you're going to have a rowdy crowd and no one's really paying attention yet. People are still getting situated. They're not sucked into the story. But at the end of a film, I think people are invested and they're waiting. You can hear the pin drop finally. And so the timing of using silence, I thought was just beautiful and brilliant and just genius filmmaking. I mean, I think Coogler, I don't think we've seen Coogler's best yet. Let that sink in. He's still got amazing shit to do. And so yeah, that's a scene I'll probably study a little bit more as time goes by, just for the emotion of it. I don't really think anything really happens in those flashbacks, right? We're just kind of sitting.
When he gets knocked down and then has those flashbacks and pops back up.
Yeah. Like, what is there really?
It's, I mean, his dad is there. Don't we see him with Bianca at one point? Or
yeah, we see him and Bianca. We see him and Rocky.
Yeah.
And it ends on his dad, and that's when, like, he just
yeah,
like a man possessed. I think Kellerman said, which I love, Max Kellerman. But I mean, just a beautiful sequence, and I don't feel like it's all us projecting, because we never hear anything. I don't think we really see anything before the emotions start kind of building, like, get up. And yeah, just wonderfully done. Which kind of comes down to reaction shots. I think the reaction shots really tell the story of this film. And they do so much. The reaction shots can create tension on themselves. Like, there's this little moment that I really love in the locker room before the Sparino fight, where we see the cut man setting up his gear, right? He's got this little dedicated wristband, and he's inserting these tools, and he's prepping gel and whatever else. And we're watching him do that. And then we cut to Bianca, and she's reacting to that. And it's like this, we start identifying with her. Like, this is a violent sport. This guy is already prepared for violence. That's what he's here for. And so as the girlfriend, that's the perfect person to cut to. I mean, we could cut to Rocky, but that's old hat to him, right? Cut me, Mick. Like, but to see a musician who's not used to this kind of violence. And then on top of that, it's his girlfriend who has a vested interest in his safety. Like, that's the perfect person to see. Oh, wow. And then even later in the film, during the final fight, like seeing Bianca and Marianne, and even hearing Rocky, and they're all yelling, and we cut a few times. Like, initially we see the kind of winces from Bianca and Marianne to let us know in that first round things are not going the way we were hoping. And then we're hearing Rocky yelling, and then as the film progresses towards the end, like, we're hearing them yell again. And I love it because it creates tension and fear when they're drowned out. Like, we see and can kind of hear them yelling, but they're kind of drowned out, and it's kind of frantic, and we're identifying with their anxiety. Like, their reaction to what's happening is kind of informing us of how bad things are. And that gives us a lifeline to the rest of humanity to say, oh, no, this isn't going the way it should. Whereas if we just stayed in the ring with Adonis the whole time, I think we're just kind of waiting on him to land his punch and to get back into it. Whereas if we see the fear in everyone else's eyes, it's suddenly like, oh, this may not go the way we want. And now we have this beautiful, like, tension that's set up for that perfect final sequence. But a lot of this movie is built off of reactions, because it's like a fight. Life is throwing a lot of punches. How Rocky reacts to getting cancer is a punch to Donnie. And then how Donnie reacts, to how Rocky reacts is by punching the rapper. And then, of course, Bianca reacts to that by shutting out Donnie. Like, it becomes this really bad loop of people, dominoes kind of falling and reacting to one another. And then even Sparino, he feels spited that Rocky's training Adonis and not giving his boy any attention. That becomes a whole thing, right? It's never stated, but we see how excited he is to introduce his son to Rocky. And then we see his reaction to seeing that actually he's there to train Adonis, this nobody kid that's never had a trainer. And then, of course, this isn't built out of nothing, and it's not there for nothing, because it ultimately leads to revealing Adonis's true last name. Because we find out that Sparino knows, and Rocky's like, hey, keep this quiet. And I'm sorry, I agree with Sparino, on this. If my son gets knocked out by some no name, that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. But if my son gets knocked out by a Creed, okay, now my son's in the spotlight and I can redeem this loss. And boxing, a loss is detrimental to your career. You better be already, a title champion before you get that loss, or else you're never going to get a chance at a title. Like it's so important keeping that in your record. And so Sperino understands the value of name, the same reason that Conlan's, guy in his corner wanted him to use the Creed names. Like, we can't get paid if Creed isn't in the ring. And so who you are matters a lot. And who is he? And so this gets into Donnie's motivation. So we meet him in juvie. He's rescued by Marianne. And that's when he finds out that he's a Creed, who his dad is. And so fighting was already in his blood. We meet him before he knew who he was. And I think that's important to understand. He is a fighter. That's in his DNA, and then finding out Creed, Apollo was his dad, I'm sure just lights a fire that nothing else is going to do. And so, like you said earlier, Adonis quits his job. He just got a promotion, but that's not the life he needs. And so this kind of opens a question. If he's not fighting for his life, then why fight? Right? He lies to his mom about quitting. And that's, of course, great to set up tension that she does not approve, and that he's taking big risks in order to do this. And he fights alone, right? The Tijuana fight, there's this opening scene where he's sharing a locker room with his opponent. Like, he's watching his opponent get wrapped up by his coach. But we see Adonis has no one wrapping his hands. Like, he's by himself. And then, of course, he gets turned down in his dad's boxing gym. The first person he goes to is his own dad's gym, and he can't get any help there. The guy just mocks him, basically. Throws him in the ring with the number 2 contender, and without really any conscience. Okay. And then he heads, of course, because of that, he heads down to Philly. He's like, if no one's going to train me out here, I'm going to Philly. And what kind of amused me about this, and this is absolutely apropos of nothing, but this is kind of an inverted Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, because Fresh Prince moved from Philly to LA to be with a rich family. Now you have this rich kid who's moving to Philly to be with a poor family. It's kind of fun. But
That's awesome.
Sperino shrugs him off, right? He gets to mix. I love that they included mixed gym, and it's been spruced up and revitalized. And I love that they included it. But Sperino shrugs him off. He's like, yeah, I'll show you whenever I have a minute, like a couple things, drills, whatever, but you're on your own, basically. And even Rocky questions why he's doing what he's doing, but he works with him anyway. And so they save the real motivation for the final round of the fight, which of course is he just feels like a mistake, and that he is fighting for his life. He's just not fighting for his livelihood. That's the difference between him and all these other boxers. They're fighting because they need it to make money. He's doing it because he needs a reason to live, and to understand his existence. His reason for existence is much bigger, in understanding his place in the world and in his dad's world. And it's just this wonderfully executed moment. Of course, I didn't expect, maybe you saw this coming, this loop of, if I'm going to fight, you're going to fight too. Like, they start that, of course, with Creed, Donnie telling Rocky that, hey, you're going to get treated. Did you see that coming? This is going to come back in a loop, or did you just, say, oh yeah, that makes sense when it happens?
Yeah, no, I saw it coming.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure.
They caught me by surprise.
Yeah. He's not going to let Rocky. Yeah, no, Adonis is not a quitter.
Yeah.
In any state, right? At least not at this point in his life, right? He hasn't been beat down like Rocky's been beat down. So I think, whereas I understood Rocky's decision to just let it be.
Yeah.
I also saw Adonis saying, absolutely not. You're going to fight this. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, did you think Rocky was going to throw that back to him? Whenever you're hearing that the first time, I'm wondering if you saw the loop coming ahead of time of Adonis throwing this at Rocky and then Rocky throwing it back at him at the end.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying at the end. No, absolutely did not. No,
it was nice.
Yeah, it was like the final, it's like the final, Rocky's final little punch there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it. I was like, oh, that's an unexpected, loop. And then, cue the Rocky theme. That might be the only time we hear that specific theme. There's the other interlude kind of theme that they the piano sequence that they played throughout the film, which I love. Like that's a good Rocky sprinkling. Then Adonis pops into frame, bump, 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 bump. And it's so good. And so throughout the movie, we kind of accept his need to fight basically through his passion. We understand and identify with passion. Like he loves this thing. And so we identify through his passion and how he isn't just trying to live off his dad's name out of pride. Like we know, okay, this is a self-made man thing. Like, especially if you're a guy watching this, like this is something that I feel like we're constantly kicking each other with growing up is, have some pride and do it on your own kind of stuff. And so we're kind of watching him through that lens of, yeah, we respect you. You're trying to do it on your own because Rocky even respects that, right? He's not trying to live off his dad's name. But then what we discover is his pride was really just masking his vulnerability of feeling abandoned and disconnected from his heritage. Like that's such a wonderfully complex character dynamic that finds its way at the pinnacle, at the most crucial point in the film. And that's so tough to do in a boxing movie, to find what's the heart of this drama and how can we bring it at the most pivotal moment of the fight. Like, how can we create the drama that we can summarize in a sentence that suddenly clarifies the entire movie? Holy shit. That's so incredibly hard to work your way through. Like that, if you've never tried to write something like that, maybe you don't appreciate it. But once you kind of realize what he was doing, Coogler was doing throughout this entire movie, to have that moment crystallized in a sentence and to be his reason for fighting and for getting back in and like giving it his all, and accomplishing something, like that's just really next level filmmaking. And my hat's off to Coogler and Aaron Covington for sure. Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of all I have for that. I mean, that's
a lot.
That's a lot.
It's not a little bit stuff. No, it's absolutely inspiring. It's just fantastic. I feel like it took the whole boxing movie genre and took it up another level, right? Yeah. Because so Rocky 1 is about boxing, but it's not about boxing at all. This movie is kind of like in between. You have movies that are about boxing only, really about boxing, but not really. And I feel like this is like right in the middle. There's plenty of boxing in it. And I love it. But there's so much around it that that means that basically it's like if you took out some of the boxing, it would still be very interesting and would still be a great film, But if you took out some of the story, it would still be very interesting because the boxing is fantastic in it. I thought,
yeah,
and it's gruesome and beautiful. That clip you played is so amazing. I just love it because it's a little insight into something that might possibly be something that they do, right? Like if in a normal fight that nobody would know, right? They just give you this little bitty nugget of something, like a little bit of inside, that could possibly be something that actually happens. It's a beautiful moment that they're in his corner no matter what. And there's one other moment where, and I forgive me because I forget, I don't have it in front of me, but where in that scene where Rocky says, I should have thrown in the towel, I'm throwing in the towel now. And Adonis says, no, don't do it, whatever. Well, when Adonis gets knocked down towards the end, right, and he has the whole, he's knocked out essentially.
Yeah.
I think that from what I remember, before or maybe even during we're seeing all the flashbacks, you hear Rocky telling him to get up. Whereas, in other movies, you might hear them saying, you'd hear Mick saying, stay down, trying to protect him. But Rocky understands better than anybody on the planet, Adonis, and what drives him. And he tells him, no, okay, you made this decision. Make it again. Get up. And what has he been telling his son throughout the other movies? And all the other, the other kids that he's trained and anybody else that would listen. Nobody's going to hit as hard as life. It's about how hard you get hit and getting back up. Like it's the whole purpose of Rocky, and him telling him to get up during that instead of to stay down was like, it was a beautiful moment that I noticed and thought they thought about this.
Yeah.
What would Rocky say? So
that's
anyway.
such a great point. My God, that's such a good point, because I think you're right. A lot of other people would be like, wake up. Like if anything, like just wake up, or they're in the ring already. They're calling it, right? Rocky could have called it. He could have gotten the ring.
Right.
And to your point, he didn't. He says, get your ass up. I love that. And also to your point, yeah, I think this is a pretty pure boxing film. It contrasts, and we'll certainly get into the finer points of this in a future Patreon episode, bonus episode. This is a pretty close to a pure boxing film. There is some light drama between him and Bianca, him and his mom, and even him and Rocky, right, with the cancer sequence. But all of it still very tightly revolves around boxing. And I don't know what other film I would put ahead of this in terms of it's more focused on boxing. Like I could see this being on par with $1 Million Baby. Like but more than, I watch a lot of boxing films. This might be my favorite sports category of film. Southpaw, and certainly more than Cinderella Man. I think this is just a very pure boxing film. And you're right. All the drama is perfect. It fits, but largely we're hanging around. And the technique I thought was really good. Like the shadow boxing is fantastic. He's really working it. He's really working the speed bag. He's really working the mitts. Those combinations are like badass. I love watching them box in this because I take them seriously. And it's perfect too, because we get into that final fight and it's a great mixture of great technique and like fervent chaos. Like, we're letting it down a little bit because either we're tired or we're pissed off, and he got me, now it's my turn to get him. And when you do that, when you move and you rush, like your guard's going to slip a little bit, and technique is going to fall a little bit to the wayside. That stuff happens in regular boxing. Like I was absolutely just floored with how good the technique in this movie. I'm very passively novice. Maybe the Freddie Roaches of the world are out there saying, y'all could do better. But for a passive fan like me, like I was thrilled for sure with the level of technique, and it touched just enough Rocky territory while still keeping our feet rooted in boxing territory.
Yeah, totally. And the one thing about all Rocky films, except for maybe the first one, because there's very little fighting in the first one, and there's almost no sound in the beginning fight, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Go back and watch that. It's almost no sound. It's weird.
Even when they're landing punches. Yeah.
Yes. Almost nothing.
Right.
But in a real boxing match, very rarely do hits land the way that they do.
Yeah.
But this is an entertainment. This is a piece of entertainment too. And watching everybody block every punch, except for maybe like 3 or 4, and the 4th one knocks them down, is much less exciting and entertaining. It's boring, really.
Yeah.
If you're trying to push a story along and have the feeling of my guy is losing, because a lot of times boxing is about points, and whereas I kind of block it, but I don't really. Well, it's not an obvious point.
Yeah,
it's not an obvious point to somebody who doesn't know what they're looking at. So let's make it a no-brainer. Oh, Adonis gets hit. Okay, he does that. And most boxers are like, they have their fists up here protecting. And a lot of times in these films Rocky never protects himself ever in any movie. But I don't care. I don't care. I love it because it tells me if he's losing or if he's winning.
Yeah.
His reaction to getting hit, the music along with him getting hit, the sound, right? Like what he does in reaction to it. Like it's just, it's necessary, even though it's not totally real. But I felt like the way the punches were thrown, the reactions, the progressions that they were doing. I mean, I'm not a boxer, but it felt very, very legit to me too.
Totally.
So
nice. My last comment, like, I'm excited. There's a third Creed coming out, and it's going to be directed, I think, by Michael B. Jordan himself.
I heard about that.
That's super exciting.
That's awesome.
I'm always rooting for actors to get behind, and not just because that's me, but I'm always rooting for actors to get behind the camera and direct. Like, a lot of times, not always, it doesn't always work. Not every actor is necessarily a good actor, understands why their acting is good or whatever. But a lot of actors, I find, just have a much more emotional grasp of what makes performance work. And whenever you take that behind the camera to tell a story, you start to connect with the human element of the story instead of just, explosions and good fight sequences and choreography. So I'm hoping a lot, for Michael B. Jordan to be a success. I'm really excited because I'll say I wasn't a big fan of Creed 2. I saw that and it did not work for me at all. And I'll save all that commentary, but and so
did Coogler write that one too?
No, I don't think he did.
Okay.
I think, they obviously used a lot of his characters, but that's about the extent of it. And so I guess that made me feel better, but I'm excited to see that story continue regardless.
Definitely.
I'll be lining up to see Creed and hopefully in theaters if we still have them.
Yeah. I'm getting antsy.
Anyway, so what are you going to recommend this week?
So I'm going to stick with the Stallone train here.
Tango and Cash. No, what do you got?
Yeah. Cliffhanger. No. No, I'm going to go with Rambo 4, just called Rambo. And I cannot believe it came out in 2008. I feel like maybe it came out 5 years ago, but and this is not the first Rambo, which is First Blood in 1982. This is not the last one, which is Last Blood, which is 2019. This is the fourth one, 2008. So he's an older guy, and I thought that I was very surprised when I saw it because he says very little, never takes his shirt off. It's very unassuming, the film. I love the way that he is in it. He plays it really well. And it's just really surprisingly good. And Sylvester Stallone directed it too.
Ooh. Nice.
Yeah.
Very nicely done. I am going to jump the rail altogether and recommend a new movie that's out right now called The Mauritanian, depending on how you pronounce that. It's a pretty good movie. I will say there's two levels of looking at this. One of them is, as a movie in and of itself, pretty good. But it's very much based on a real story, a very true story. And I think it's told pretty faithfully. And it's about a Mauritanian man who is taken by our government and tortured for basically 14 years. Because we believed, us imperialists, that he was a part of the 9/11 plot. And so he had some incidental ties with a couple of people that were involved with Al-Qaeda. And so he got kidnapped by us and tortured. And it's just a brutal, heartbreaking film that I think is important. There are a few things in this world right now that get me more riled up than our foreign policy and how we treat the rest of the world. I would say that's my number one thing. I would do literally anything if I thought, I could make a difference in that world. And hopefully someday I'll be able to, contribute something. But The Mauritanian, absolutely worthwhile. It's based on this guy's memoir, which I think just came out. And so I plan to read that as well. But 14 years, this guy was held. He was taken and held despite no evidence. And so it's about his trial, him going to trial and effectively being proven innocent. And what I love about it is the approach is so well laid out. It's so well directed because it would be easy to sit there and watch this story from the perspective of, yeah, he's innocent. Obviously he's innocent. He's done nothing wrong. Instead, they kind of approach it from the point of view of his attorneys who don't know. As an attorney, you never know if your client is innocent or guilty. All you can do is, afford them the right to their rights. And Jodie Foster does a fantastic job. Shailene Woodley is great. And so it's compelling for sure.
Is it streaming?
Yeah, it's a very expensive rental. It's like $20. It's
oh, gotcha. It's like one of those theater. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. It lives in the gap of our cinema chaos right now.
The gap. Man,
yeah.
The gap.
And so, yeah, I highly recommend it. I think it's worth being aware about and, using that as information about things you find important with your, the way you view our government and our history of treating people, and even whatever. I'm doing everything I can to not go on a belligerent rant.
I understand
about a lot of things. So
I know you.
The Mauritanian. Right. I'll say that.
Okay. We'll go watch it.
Yep. And so stay tuned. Next week, we're going to do one more boxing film that's unrelated to Rocky or Creed. Instead, it's based on a real fighter, and it's called The Fighter, with Mark Wahlberg, Christian Bale, directed by David O. Russell. I think this is our first David O. Russell film, and so that'll be fun. There's a lot of things David O. Russell does in his filmmaking that I always think about a lot whenever I think about making my own stuff. And so it'll be fun to kind of take a peek at that. And so, yeah, stay tuned next week, The Fighter. And then we'll also be doing a bonus episode for our patronites, that will look at Rocky and Creed and The Fighter. And we'll kind of see what's what about all three of those films. Don't forget, subscribe, review us on iTunes. Shout out to all of our Patreon subscribers. We really appreciate you. We're effectively paying for the hosting, I think, at this point with the your donation. So thank you so much. That means a lot to me and
Amazing.
Todd. And thank you for being part of our tribe. If you want to comment on this episode or request that we do something, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/creed.
And our quote of the day that we'll leave you with is from Muhammad Ali. He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. It's so, man, it's like, boom, spot on. Absolutely. And it's so easy to say that, and it's so hard to do it in a lot of ways. I mean, you spend your life trying to make money, and then the thought of spending it on something, betting on yourself, like, that's just one example. There's a million of them, but that's true. You only live once. I mean, YOLO is a thing.
Yeah.
It really is a thing. And it's not just a Gen Y thing. It is a legitimate, something that I wish would have been a saying when I was younger, even though I did take risks.
Yeah.
I take fewer now, and I should take more. So this is a really good thing for me to see right now.
Yeah. It's funny because on the one hand, you maybe don't put anything in the pot that you're not willing to lose, or that you can't lose.
Right. Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, we're one way or the other, we're all responsible for our lives and the risks we take or the risks we don't. And I just have such a high tolerance for risk. It's absurd. I also take my lumps on the face. But Todd, is got his hand on the back of my neck and he's tapping 4 while the ref is putting 4 fingers up,
I got you,
yeah.
Big guy.
And so
I got you.
Be courageous, take risk, or else what are we doing here?
Exactly. That's it. I mean, I could add so much to that. We could do a whole episode on that. Maybe we'll do a short episode for our patrons on just our thoughts on that quote right there. I feel like, Elon Musk would be proud. Anyway, yeah, like Wes said, thank you so much for joining us. Join us next week. We'll be covering The Fighter. Thank you so much to all our patrons. It's a big thing that we can actually pay for that. You don't even understand. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Until next week, I am Todd.
I am Wes.
Go watch the movies. We're such dorks. Oh my God.